sauce, so to speak, right? Learning the recipes, learning the know-how, the workflows, the special process that they have in that franchise concept and system, so that they are teaching you everything you need to know to operate their business, right? And to operate it successfully and operate it well. So because of that, you're walking away with special knowledge in your brain, knowledge that they can't take back, right? They can't go in and grab it back from you, unlike the operations manual. They can take that back from you, right? They can come in and make sure that you aren't trying to walk off with their manuals and technical details and stuff like that, but they can't take it out of your brain, right? It's there. It's you're going to walk away with it, and yeah, that's the concern. So the non-compete is a way to address that. It's a way to keep franchisees, or ex-franchisees really, from unfairly competing with a franchise concept. An unfair competition means that you are stealing or unlawfully taking that special technical knowledge that they gave you for you to operate their concept. This is probably one of the most litigated aspects of the franchise industry. It would be this, and probably, well, I would say non-compete confidentiality would go together in regards to being one of the number one causes of lawsuits in the franchise industry. Others being just things like abandonment or shutting it down, whatever, things like that. But so this is a very, very important concept. The only reason I mention that is it is something that could definitely lead to lawsuits, right, and lead to litigation. So something to be aware of and understand it. And it's important for the franchise industry. Like I said, it's how they protect themselves. You as a franchisee, your obligation is to understand that non-compete and to abide by it, frankly. Non-competes, as unfair as they may sound, the vast majority of them are actually quite reasonable. A typical non-compete in a franchise agreement will have a jurisdictional or a geographic limitation along with a time limitation. And that's because of U.S. laws, right? U.S. law will not typically enforce a non-compete unless it has those reasonable restrictions. There's other caveats in there, but for our sake, in regards to franchisees, are not really relevant. So a jurisdictional or geographic limitation, what is that? What does it mean? It means basically there has to be a territorial limit on your non-compete. So there is physically a boundary where you are allowed to compete outside of, and you're not allowed to compete within. Typically, these are like 15 to 20 or 25 miles around your store location, right? Your franchise unit, or any other franchise unit. And that could be quite substantial, or it could be almost nothing, right? Obviously, if you're a former McDonald's franchisee, you're not going to be opening up a burger shop anywhere really in the U.S. that you could do very well, because they're everywhere. On the other hand, if it's a startup franchise concept that has 5, 6, 7 locations, and you end up exiting and have a non-compete on your exit, probably the vast majority of the country is available to you to compete, to go and open up another shop just like you just left, with caveats, of course. So that's the jurisdictional or the territorial limitation on a non-compete. It is, it's very reasonable. It's not impossible. The only area I've ever seen this personally really affect franchisees and some of my clients is where they are a tradesman. So where they're like air conditioner repair, or plumber, or an electrician, things like that. People who are licensed specifically for certain trades, and then they either join a system, right, a franchise concept, and then leave it. Now they're restricted from operating their trade in a certain geographic limitation. And that's, there are some, in certain states, there are some ways around that, which we won't get into in this video, but that's where I've seen it affect our clients, and we've had to counsel them through that and make decisions on how to approach it and what to do in that situation. But generally, it's very reasonable. So the other aspect, besides the territorial restriction, is the time restriction. So it is not a universal, forever restriction on competition. There is a time limit. It will be a restriction up to a certain time. So when you leave the system, what's very, very typical is that it's 2 years. So 2 years after you leave a franchise concept, you're not going to be allowed to compete within those 2 years. 2 years in 1 day, you can compete, right? You can go open up your own shop. as long as you with some caveats, as long as you're not stealing trade secrets, right? So that's an example of a time limitation. It's almost always 2 years. I've seen some as short as maybe 18 months or a year. It's very rarely beyond 2 years because of U.S. Just our legal system. We don't like to make it too long. So it's usually for franchisees, these terms are very reasonable. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time when we help a franchisee exit a system, they almost never want to do the same thing. Right? If you just spent the last 10 years or maybe 20 years making sandwiches, you probably don't want to leave the system and then go and make sandwiches, right? So it's almost never truly a concern for us or consideration that we have to really try to mitigate for our clients. But I wanted to share a little bit about the non-competes. It's something that we always talk about and educate our franchisee clients about so that they understand what it means and where they need to behave and do certain things in the future. So if we can help you out in understanding your franchise agreement or potentially franchising your concept, please reach out to us. That's what we do. We love helping folks in the franchise industry. It's very dynamic. There's all sorts of businesses out there that are franchising these days and just doing tremendously well. So we'd love to hear your story and see if we can be of service to you and see if we're the right fit. Talk to you next time.